Hey Ramblers, before we kick off today's episode, I just want you to know that we're finally ready to launch OffSource and it's going to be in October. The team is working tirelessly and endlessly to bring you an amazing product and service. So if you know anyone that needs a virtual assistant or just like to make some extra money for our referral program, tell them to head to offsource.tech or text info to 516-408-2427. Make sure you're following us across all social media at OffSourceHQ. Now let's get ready to ramble. And now, a moment from our sponsor.
Good morning, Ramblers. Welcome to another episode of The Rambling. I'm your host, Angelo Roberts, and we are, again, another episode without Ben. I think Ben's going to be out this whole week. He'll be back next week or probably this weekend or so. And so today, we have probably another short episode, but I would like to just get some things off of my mind, right? And so I'm having not a marketing issue, but say a language barrier issue, right? So when you're in a business or when you're a part of a particular industry or a particular niche or something for a certain amount of time, you're accustomed to the language and lingo in that particular industry. So for example, in tech or in business, in general, for a, a good amount of us, we would be familiar with terms like SaaS, business software, virtual assistant, things of that, like you could decipher things of that nature because you understand a good portion of the lingo. However, when you look at solopreneurs and regular business owners, the majority of them don't have or are not hip or privy to that kind of lingo, saying things like SaaS product. So if I were to say a SaaS manager, it wouldn't be too far-fetched for you to think, oh, okay, well, if I have a SaaS product, someone that manages my SaaS, right? So the language barrier isn't that there's a different language being spoken. It's that the words commonly used that I'm used to using would create a problem in a buying process. And so something I've learned as being a CEO is that when you're trying to market your product, when you're trying to get across what you need to do with your audience, when you're trying to sell something, it's not about what you do. You can explain what you do to other people that do what you do or are closely related to doing what you do. However, when you have to explain something to someone who's going to be using your service or product, they have no idea what it is that you're talking about. For example, if you were to hire a carpenter to fix your shed, to build you a shed, and he said, listen, we need to get plywood with this kind of durability and it's got to be a 3x9 at this rate, at this height, and we should go to this store because this place has different quality, you'd be kind of lost. I mean, some of you might because, you build decks and sheds and everything, but I'd be lost, So when someone says, hey, listen, we need the third quarter figures or third quarter projections on MRR and compare that to the previous year's quarter's MRR and see what we can do to increase the bottom line. For some people, that might be what? For other people, that's okay, cool. I can do that. I know what you said, and I can go do that. So for the owners and other business owners that aren't going to be hip or privy to certain technological jargon, saying things like SaaS management, business software, even a SaaS product, there's just small nuances. So me saying virtual assistant can be kind of like, well, what does a virtual assistant do? I wouldn't know how that worked. So in creating what should I say, a teachable moment, I'm kind of stuck at how am I going to teach the end consumer how to use a virtual assistant? What are the benefits? That these benefits actually exist and can be tangible should you take advantage of it properly, and how to take advantage of it properly. Because I don't want to just leave people in the dark. And so like what I'm doing now is really trying to refine my sales cycle. Well, not even necessarily my sales cycle, the customer sales experience, if you will, the CSE, the customer sales experience. So I'm trying to, while still making money, obviously, because we have to be able to convert leads. So it's trying to create an ease for the person onboarding and trying to handle the client, while also making it an ease for the client trying to be onboarded. So it's slightly tough though. It's not something that is easy. However, with planning, and I'm not big on reading. I feel like I don't have time to just sit there and read a book. So I do like a lot of like YouTube, like the lectures. Oh my gosh, that don't get me started on lectures. Like I am currently technically, I guess if you will, taking a class from Stanford called Blitzscaling. And so what happened is there's this particular class called Blitzscaling, taught by, I cannot remember the two people's name right now, but it's taught by like these two founders of like these other companies. And I know you know the names. I think it's like PayPal or something like that. Anyway, so it's literally, the class is 18 weeks long or something like that, and there's 18 episodes, so once a week and everything. Or even if the class is 9 weeks long, which would be 2.5 months, 2 months and a quarter. Yeah, 2 months and 2 full months, because that's 4 weeks each and then a week. So 9 weeks, that's 2 times a week. I have access to that information, what was taught, the questions that were asked, the answers that were given. That's why I'm like, education is so wonky, man. Like, how are you going to tell me I have to go to this particular school to receive this education? Like, so the children being in that class and doing the work is so much more different than if I watched the class, listened to the same thing, learned the same information, heard the same answers. Because here's the thing, you can't assume everyone's going to be in class asking questions. Yes, you have the ability to ask questions, but some people don't like asking questions. They don't like being out there, So you can't say that every person is going to ask a question. Some people are just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to the dorm and Google it more. If I don't understand, I'm not going to raise my hand because I don't want to bring attention to myself and seem like I'm not as smart. So you can't say every single person is going to ask questions. So you should not invalidate, because you can obviously, but you should not invalidate someone else's learning experience because it wasn't directly learned in the same institution that you learned it. And because you learned what you learned in a different institution shouldn't make what you learned any different than what someone else learned. Now, I will say, if you have a lecture class taught by two different people, for example, if you had a lecture class taught by Brian Chesky, which is someone that was featured as a guest speaker in that particular Blitzscaling class, versus, someone who's only theorized and never ran a business before. Oh, by the way, if you guys don't know, Brian Chesky is the not owner, but CEO and founder of Airbnb, or one of the founders at least. So obviously it's better to learn about being a CEO from someone like Airbnb, because they were a startup company. So it's much better to have someone with the experience. So that's more valuable, I can say. But it's not at that price point for it to be a guest speaker and not him teaching the class. I wouldn't consider that particular price point, which is why a lot of people can be considered underrepresented founders, because they're not getting the same looks as people that are going to these big name schools. Why does the name of the school you went to have to be associated with the success you have? Because they want to keep money in the pockets, which is why the internet, and I always talk about the free market, creating free market. The internet creating free market is going to change, especially now. We've reached the time where it's going to start disrupting, because of EdTech, it's going to start disrupting the education market, where people are going to say, you know what, a couple of years, like, I'm going to call it now. This is my call. This is my call. This is my very first call that I'm going to put on the podcast. And So this is what I'm going to say. The same way that we said social media and the internet were going to be a phase, or anything was going to be a phase, right? And so when the internet popped up and we got Facebook, we said it was going to be a phase, and that if you're doing comedy, if you're doing Facebook videos, if you're trying to be Facebook famous, you stop it, get a job. Then we said if you were going to be an Instagram model, if you were going to be an Instagram celebrity, an Instagram influencer, get a job. If you're going to be a YouTube person, if you're going to be a YouTuber, YouTube influencer, you're going to make funny skits, you're going to put cartoons, you're going to do reviews of products, you're going to do whatever you were going to do on YouTube. They said, stop it. That's a hobby. Get a real job. Now we see 10 years later that these are actual income producing things. And not only are they income producing, opportunities, they are multi-income producing opportunities for multiple people, because you can make enough money to now hire a crew, and you've created a small, very, very small micro ecosystem of wealth, because you are able to pay a camera person, someone to edit your videos, unless you're editing them yourself. You're able to, offer sponsorships to, if you're a micro influencer, you can now offer sponsorships to other businesses, and that helps them. So you're bringing value to them, and they're bringing value to you, because you're making money for having a fan base and everything. So it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? Continuative, because it brings everything together. I guess that would be the word I'm looking for. Continuative. It's really continuative when you're doing business, because it's very, very tight niche, especially as you continue to grow and you add people to your team. And so, mark my words. This is like I said, so circling back, marking my words. Because of coronavirus, not just because of coronavirus, but I mean, eventually it would happen. A couple of years ago, people were making fun of going to school online. Oh, you got your degree online. Oh, you got your degree online. It was something we made fun of, just like being an Instagram model, just like being a YouTuber, just like being a Facebook comedian, being a Facebook comedian, a YouTuber, and an Instagram model, the big trio of getting made fun of. Oh, and then being a journalist on Twitter. So all of those things, before didn't pay, and people wanted to do it. They're like, hey, we can do this. And people made fun of them. And so we are breaking through, I see, the age of where EdTech is now going to break the stigma of learning online, where you like people before it was, oh, you got your degree online, does it really count? Now it's going to be the preferred way to get a degree. That's my opinion. That's what I see. I feel like it's coming. It's going to disrupt EdTech all the way. If you can't see it coming, then I don't know, because people are begging for a reason to have education, but not at the Harvard price. People want a Harvard education at the Harvard price. People want a Harvard education, but not at the Harvard price. Why? Because it's not even worth the Harvard price. It's not. It's really not. However, they want you to have this facade that it is. So I think that in the next it's 2020. So by 2025, just like in 2015, when we had the Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff was super big, because back in 2010, it was still a baby to us technically, because everything was in 08, 09, all this technology stuff, or even 05 to 010, right? So in 15, it boomed. I feel like in 25, EdTech is going to have a real big boom, and learning online is going to be the best thing since sliced bread.
Before you go, Ramblers, if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you're following me across all platforms at Assistance HQ. Catch up on exclusive content and keep track of everything going on at OffSource. See you in October.